Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Valley of the Sun Real Estate. I'm your host, Jayson Bates, the lender who lives in and is a part of your community. If you're a first-time listener, well, I really appreciate you choosing this podcast over all the other podcasts that are out there. So much, much appreciated for that. And if you want to reach out to the show, well, I definitely want to hear from you, and you can do so by visiting my webpage at www.valleyofthesunrealestateshow.com. From there, connect with me on any social media platform. Now, on today's show, I have a very special guest. His name is Jay Jasper. Hello, Jay. How you doing?
I'm good. I feel very special. Thank you.
Yes, you are very special. Because there's not many agents, as I've said before, who are willing to come on to a podcast. So kudos to you for even coming on board here on the podcast. So thank you for doing that.
Well, I appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. Now, Jay is a multifaceted real estate professional. Jay started his career while still attending college at the University of Minnesota, studying economics. That's a heavy degree there, Jay. My son's actually was going to ASU for economics. His dad, a Minneapolis architectural legend, land developer, and home builder, put Jay to work selling new construction homes and townhomes, as well as raw land and developed lots. During the course of his business career, Jay moved into residential real estate sales in Minnesota and in Arizona. He is armed with a vast array of knowledge from his 30-plus years of experience, including dealing with first-time home buyers, move-up buyers, luxury golf and lakeshore property, estate transactions, title challenges, short sales, and foreclosures. Jay does it just about everything there. Jay's philosophy is a blend of old-school marketing and service blended together with the latest in home search and marketing technology, social media, and networking. Jay has adult children, daughter who is finishing her studies in social work and is an avid yoga practitioner, completing her instructor's certification. Sorry about that. And a son, retired Marine Corps. Hoorah. I knew I liked you, Jay.
Hoorah. Yes. Part of the family.
Part of the family. Hoorah. Who is a self-defense and private security company that Jay plays an advisory role in. Jay loves to golf, fish, and yoga. Is a traveler when time allows and is an adventurous eater. You're more adventurous than I am in eating, man. I'm kind of stick to my own little thing. I don't go outside of what I like. Delving into foods from various parts of the world, the spicier the better. I do like spicy food, Jay. I do like that.
As they say sometimes, you think being a Minnesotan it'd only be lutefisk and lefse, but actually I'll try anything once. So, and I'm trying to podcast once. So let's go with it.
Yeah, let's do this. Okay, so let's get right into this because we've got, and if I missed anything, I'm sorry, Jay, but I think I covered it all for you.
You covered a lot.
Okay, and you can visit Jay also. I want to give you a shout out to your website here. www.desertselleraz.com is the best way to get in contact with Jay. Okay, so let's get into today's topic. Buyers, agent, sellers, agent. What does that mean to the consumer? You know, Jay, I hear this all the time. I'm a buyer's agent, I'm a seller's agent. And in the back of my head, I'm in the business, right? But in the back of my head, I think if somebody tells me that they're a seller's agent, which, it's great. It's fantastic. I think there's certain personalities that fit that. But if somebody came up to them, a consumer, and said, okay, well, you're a buyer's agent, but I want to sell my house. Would that buyer's agent turn the listing down? So I want to get into what exactly this means to the consumer. So
sounds good.
So buyer's agent, what is that? How is that determined? Is that part of a team? Kind of explain how that all comes to be, if you will.
Well, buyer's agents really haven't been around a very long time historically in real estate. Mm-hmm. It used to be that there were only listing agents or seller's agents, and a buyer would come to them, and that agent really only represented the seller, and so the buyer was really at a disadvantage. And over the last few years, this has developed because of conflicts. There's been this designation of buyer's agents, and a buyer's agent specifically represents and is a fiduciary, is to the buyer. And so, people will say, well, maybe I'll work directly with the listing agent and I'll save some money, or I'll save a step. But at the end of the day, the seller's agent or brokerage pays the buyer's agent. So it doesn't cost a buyer anything to have representation. And especially with first-time home buyers, or if you're buying in an area you're not familiar with, you think about second home buyers who are coming to the Valley from another part of the country where they're not familiar with their traditions or the practices. Having a buyer's agent steer you through that process is really invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's when I look at a buyer's agent, that's somebody that, in my mind, probably has a little more, maybe, I don't want to say, how do I say this? I don't want to sound negative to the seller's agents, but a buyer's agent seems to have a different personality, more patience, maybe is the right word there, because you got to have a lot of patience when you're dealing with, especially first-time home buyers, right?
Yeah, I think patience. The other thing is that buyers agents really become counselors on every level. First, sometimes people think it's just for first-time home buyers because they haven't purchased before. But again, there are so many moving parts in the real estate transaction, more than people realize. And I think one of the best quotes that I've heard recently is, "We're flooded with information, but we're starved for wisdom." And a good, well, you look at millennials, they got all the information. We've got Google, and we got Zillow, and we got Trulia and Realtor.com and all these sites.
Yeah.
But that provides raw information. But how you apply that to every real estate transaction really depends on the situation and the experience of your agent.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And in fact, there have been a few local studies from title companies interviewing millennials and things like that, talking about that very subject. You've got the information out there, then what? What do you do with it, kind of thing? And I think a buyer's agent, you're right, puts that into perspective for that buyer, not allowing them to veer off course or let their thoughts get the best of them, talk themselves out of a situation or talk themselves into a situation. I think a buyer's agent really puts everything, brings it back home, brings it back to reality, I think, or keeps it in reality.
True. And you have to realize that for most people, a real estate transaction, their first home purchase or buying their dream retirement home, is a very emotional purchase. So they can get blinders as to items about a property that they aren't seeing because of that blindness. And it's really that buyer's agent's job to not necessarily kill the deal, but to make them aware. It's always buyer beware. It doesn't matter if we have disclosure, it doesn't matter if we have an inspection. It's taking our years of experience and giving them the best advice and wisdom about a property they're buying, and then they can make an educated decision.
Right. And that's the other thing too. Sometimes I think buyers get kind of let the knowledge. I don't know when this changed, Jay, but we all know that a lot of buyers go to the internet for information, right?
Right.
90% studies have shown, 90% of people go to the internet to start their home buying search. And then they start to read all these articles, all these blog posts, maybe they listen to podcasts, whatever the case may be. They start getting themselves full of information. And some information out there is good, and some of it's not so good. Some of it applies in different parts of the country where it doesn't apply in other parts of the country. And sometimes that's where I think this confusion comes into play for a lot of buyers, because there's so much information out there that it's hard to decipher what's applicable to their situation. To give you an example, I just had a consumer call me yesterday, a referral from a client that I did a loan for quite some time ago. And she has been told that she can get down payment assistance with an FHA loan, but she just filed bankruptcy not too long ago on a Chapter 7. And it's like, well, the first and foremost, the FHA rules apply, then the down payment assistance rules apply. So if you don't have that waiting period on that down payment assistance,
Right,
then for the FHA, then the down payment assistance is irrelevant. Yet she's being told from somebody else that she qualifies for FHA. And it's like, well, you don't, unfortunately, because you're not out of that penalty box phase. So there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of bad information. Buyer's agent is there to help put everything in perspective to your particular situation, which I think is critical. The other thing too that I like about a buyer's agent, I want you to speak to this too, Jay, is time. Realtors get real busy with listings and other appointments and things like that. Having somebody dedicated to you, I think, is critical to the whole process.
Well, I would wholeheartedly agree. Again, I think with all the information that has become available on the internet, buyers think that they can go search out their own homes, and all an agent is doing is letting them in the door and filling out some paperwork and showing up at closing. But you have to realize that the markets, you hit on this a little bit, the markets, the national information or information in a different state does not necessarily relate to our market. And even the market in our own area is micro markets. And so just because your friend bought a house in Mesa and was in multiple offers might mean if you're buying over in Peoria and it's a little slower area, you might have more negotiating power, but only a buyer's agent's going to really understand those nuances in the market. And the time involved is really, you can't quantify the number of hours that a buyer's agent puts into each buyer. Every time they want to look at a house, it's doing a market evaluation on that property to make sure that the Zestimate, as we know, isn't always the most accurate tool out there.
Right.
And so it's taking our knowledge and making sure that house is priced right. What's a fair offer? Is that a good neighborhood? Getting them school information, getting them crime information. There's just an abundance of information that a buyer's agent is constantly providing for their client.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I couldn't agree more. And I don't think, let me ask you this. Do you ever think, do you think that, why has this idea come up sooner? You know what I mean? Like, I know that this is kind of relatively new as far as buyer's agents go. Do you recommend for consumers to seek out exclusive buyer's agents? Does it really matter? What's your opinion there?
I don't know so much about exclusive buyer's agents. As real estate professionals, we can list houses, we can be buyers represent, we can be sellers agents or buyers agents.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I've always said it's about personalities. You have to find someone that you can trust. And what the number one thing I hear from especially first-time buyers is, I don't think I can afford to hire an agent, because they think they have to pay them. Right. And they think, well, I'll find someone on the internet. But I'll tell you, it really gets to be finding someone that you have the ultimate confidence in. It's the biggest purchase you'll ever make, especially, it doesn't matter if it's your first home or your last home. And you have to have someone who's credible. And again, that cost to you is really zero, because the seller is going to pay somebody. Right. And even if you go to the seller's agent, he's going to get a majority of that whole thing. Yeah. And now you have gotten into dual agency. That's a whole other thing we could talk about, where the representation gets, I guess, diluted somewhat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You talk about reputation or experience, and this, I just talked to somebody, this is a month ago. I don't know if I told you this off camera or not, but somebody who went to an agent, they got a referral. It was their neighbor, I think their mother's neighbor or something like that, who's an agent. She has sold 5 homes since 2005. She's representing them on a $450,000 purchase. You talk about the information that, a lot of buyers want, especially first-time home buyers and that sort of thing. I know she's a, buyer's agent, whatever. She's an agent on both sides, but I think as a buyer's agent, that comes with some experience. I don't know. I'm not recommending that you have to use a buyer's agent, and I'm not saying that at all. There's, like Jay, yourself, there are plenty of great agents out there who are not just buyer's agents, but typically buyer's agents come as a team, right? They're typically part of a team when you hear them say they're a buyer's agent.
They can be if they're exclusively a buyer's agent, yes. I will say that what you tend to see in buyer's agents is that's a place where teams, this is my opinion, they will start out their newer agents.
Yep.
Again, you do have the benefit of their team leader having a lot of experience, and so they're getting coached well. But again, I think part of that is I don't want to begrudge agents who haven't had a lot of transactions in a lot of time, but more and more today, full-time real estate people are constantly in tune with what's going on in the market.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if they're full-time and they're studied and they're up to speed. I think the number of transactions maybe is less important as to their level of knowledge and commitment to the industry. And so I would always encourage people to interview those people or ask for references or ask the hard questions.
Yeah.
It's an interview both ways.
Totally. It totally is. And I've done a podcast on that, questions you should be asking your agent, that sort of thing. So definitely, look back at some of my past episodes and you can see that podcast, take a listen to that. I'll give you some ideas on what you should be asking your agent. Yeah. And I'm not trying to belittle or anything a buyer's agent. I think there's a place for it. 100%.
I agree.
And same vice versa with the seller's agent. Because the needs of a buyer are much different than the needs of a seller in a lot of cases. So with that being said, let's start talking about a seller's agent. What does that mean? Should a homeowner who's looking to sell their home, should they be seeking out that person? What is that? Explain what this buyer's agent means.
Seller's agent, you mean?
Or seller's
agent.
Yeah.
Yep. So seller agent, also known as a listing agent,
Yep.
is the agent who will be representing you as a seller in the sale of your property. So they are in charge of the marketing and negotiations of the sale on your behalf. And I hear this from for sale by owners, sellers many times, is that they'll say, well, I can save your commission and I'll make that extra money. Selling is just as emotional as buying, and part of the counsel for seller agents is understanding why someone is selling. Are they really being honest with why they're selling? Is it financial? Is it health related? Is it convenience related? Is it job related? And then crafting a marketing plan that meets those needs. If you got to move in 30 days because your company says you got to go, that's a different marketing strategy than I lost my job and I got to get out of a house, or you know what, we're thinking about downsizing and we're not necessarily in any hurry, but we'd like to accomplish that goal by a certain time. But there, again, many things are involved: checking title, making sure there's no hidden surprises, and setting up a marketing plan and photography, and on and on and on, that are involved in marketing. And so hiring a professional, at the end of the day, a lot of the studies I've seen have shown that people will end up netting more than the commission they've paid if they've hired a professional.
Yeah, no, and then there are a bunch of articles out there that even support that. I think it's what, close to maybe 5 or 10% above what you would get if you were to list it yourself. It's probably more than that, actually. It's probably closer to 15%. And that's part about knowing the market, becoming the resource for your community. And that's where I think realtors really, I think that's what they are. I think that's their place is a resource within a certain community, being that point of knowledge about what's selling, what's trending, what people are willing to pay for, what the fair market value, the direction that the real estate's going. And that's probably the first question I get from most homeowners is, what's happening in the market? Where do you see the market going? Right.
I would agree. And what happens is the media in general, nothing wrong with the media in general, but they really give just a blush of what's happening. And typically it's been said that when the media finally reports something, it can be as much as 3 months old. And we really if you look at information like from the Cromford report by Michael Orr and some of the gurus who analyze our market information on a daily basis, we truly are changing on a daily or weekly basis. And so if you're not keeping up with that, for instance, on a list price, you can be chasing it down because you're afraid of giving something up. Or, and you have to look at what's happening with your neighbors and why your house hasn't sold and what's the competition. And you can't do that via just a Zillow or a realtor.com site. You can't analyze the numbers.
Yeah, you've got to be involved. You've got the numbers. I always say the numbers don't speak the entire truth, right? You can't look at a property and say, okay, my neighbor sold their house and their square footage is, X, and divide that by the sales price, and that's price per square foot, and then incorporate that into your house. At least not here in Phoenix. Maybe another.
You know what? That's the common formula that people give when you give them a list price and they don't like it. They go, well, exactly. My neighbor's house sold, and well, it might have been a year and a half ago. Well, guess what? 3-month-old data is about as far back as we really should be going, especially as seasonal as we are here. And so, it's educating them as to why it's nice to have that as a benchmark, but you can't use that as gospel. I mean, price per square foot, there's so many agents love to use, and people love to use price per foot when that is only really one factor in the computing of value.
Yeah, no. And I think TV does a bad job of that too, right?
I'm an HTGTV junkie, but I watch these guys. I go, stop it. That's not true. That's not how this happens. But that people bring that up. Buyers and sellers go, well, I saw this. I was watching HGTV and I saw this, and I go, well, that's nice. That's TV. This is reality. So
yeah. It's a good starting point, right? It's a good foundation, but it
is
not be applicable to you may back a busy street, you may be across from a park. There are other factors that contribute to that, light rail, other things that may contribute to
on the other hand, not to knock those shows, the one thing they do show is that when people go on the market on those programs, their houses are dialed in, they're staged, they show well. Yeah. And a lot of people don't want to talk about that, but agents will tell you that if that's part of that consultation. If we can change a few things, we can make a marked difference in your value without you spending a lot of money. Right. And those consultations, that's part of the services that we provide as sellers agents.
So answer this for me here. As a consumer, and I'll ask you first from a buyer's agent perspective. If I'm a consumer, what are 3 things that I should expect to receive if I hire a buyer's agent?
Well, the first thing you have to receive is an agent's going to hold up their fiduciary to you. Loyalty and confidentiality, and they're going to be honest with you, and they're going to have your back. I mean, you have to have that truly. The interview process works both ways. I mean, I have had people where I've said, I don't think we're the right match because I don't think we're communicating. So you have to find someone that you feel like you can communicate with. It's interesting. I just had a past client send me, they were millennials, and they sent me a nice review where they said, we felt like you gave us fatherly advice and steered us in the right direction. Well, in a way, depending on what your client is, that's what you're doing. You're giving them that advice and wisdom. So you need to find someone who's going to have your back. Secondly, I think you need to look at someone who's, what has been their track record with buyers. If they're buyers agents, ask for some references. Say, hey, do you got a few people? Am I going to give you the best references? Sure. But if they're recent and they are willing to tell that story, you're going to get at least a feel for how the process went. And third, I think it's important that you have someone who is with a good company and has a wide range of resources for you. For instance, mortgage referrals. I mean, I can't tell someone where to go, but I can, in my vast experience, I can give them some good names of people that they should interview with and talk to them about title companies and how that process works. Again, it's all about the process and how that communication is going to work. And so it's important for them to lay out with that buyer's agent and understand how the process is going to work.
Yeah, I would add to that. I would expect them to be a resource in the community. Have some, want to say over knowledge, but some pretty extensive knowledge as to what's happening in the market. You know, what kind of price point, if I would offend a seller by offering a lowball offer, I would, you know, like you said there, being a fatherly type, you know, person, the patience that comes across, not somebody who's impatient, not somebody who's matter of fact, but somebody who's willing to listen to what you have to say, take your opinion into perspective in representing you. Those are the sort of things I'd probably be looking for from a buyer's agent.
The other thing, just let me interject. I just had a client another first-time home buyer, and she said before she talked to me, she had talked to another agent who she said felt like her price point wasn't worth his while. And I said, and that happens. You don't know how many agents I talk to say, I don't like to sell over there because I don't like the price point. I don't like that. I don't want to drive that far.
Oh,
I think you have to find, but I have to think that's nothing wrong with that. We all have our own business plans. And all I'm saying is, you know, when you get to my stage in life, this counseling of people and using the wisdom that you've been given through hard knocks or however you've learned it is really the tool and the benefit and the gift I can give to buyers. And so I think they need to find someone that fits their mix. If they want to be in a certain neighborhood and they want to be part of that club or community and they feel an agent in there is they're most important, then that's who they should hire. If they're not, then they should look for someone they think that's going to give them that wisdom.
I would say to that, Jay, and I mean, if somebody called me and I was an agent and say, hey, you know, unfortunately, I don't represent that area, I wouldn't serve you best. However, I do have a referral partner who does work that area very, very well that I certainly would love to refer you to. That would be not saying, oh, I don't work that area. That's not being a resource in my opinion, but
it isn't. You're right.
I know they're out there. And that's unfortunate because that gives people like yourself and myself a bad name out there. Okay. So now same question for the seller. What are 3 things that you would say the consumer should, if an agent says, hey, I'm a sales agent, this is what I do, this is what you know, this is what I represent, this is my part of the business. What are 3 things that a seller's agent or a consumer could expect from a seller's agent?
Well, I think that part of it is, again, that interview process. So it's a comfort level on communication. But secondly, I think you have to look at how they're going to market your house. It's easy to say, I'm going to put it on the multiple listing service and I'm going to take some pictures and we'll hold an open house and we'll wring our hands and hope that the house sells. But in today's market, you talk about that blend of old school and technology. We still have to be face-to-face negotiators. We still have to network face-to-face, but we also have to be using the current and relevant technology, being on the cutting edge. As we look at these younger buyers, they're seeking out their information differently. Mm-hmm. And the last thing is, and this comes from a guy who's, I'll put a plug in for Warren Buffett. I've always been a believer in the company, and I'm not knocking other companies, but when you look at, especially in our market, where we are a global market, we're not just someone moving. Most of the time, it's someone coming in from somewhere else. Yep. What tools does that agent have that are provided by his company to reach the global market? And if small brokers will say, well, I can do that, and they can. But if I'm selling, that's pretty darn important to me, because I know that someone in the upper Midwest or the East Coast or in Canada or wherever else is going to be looking for houses. What's their presentation? How are they going to reach them? And then finally, it's that communication plan. Again, everything works when there is communication, and when there isn't, it's not. And again, I've been at listing tables where we've said, you know what, I think you should hire somebody else, because if you don't feel like the seller's going to communicate with you or they're not listening to you, then you're going to have a really awful experience, and they're not going to be well served, and they're not going to like you in the end. So it's being honest, honesty, communication.
And honesty is really hard from a seller's agent, right? I feel like it is, at least here in Phoenix, because it's so competitive. And sometimes, I say this wholeheartedly, sometimes you can't, well, all the times you can't polish a turd, right? So
No.
if a house is not showing well, you have to be honest with your seller and say, hey, look, this is the price point. Here's the reasons why, and you have to be honest. And I sometimes I think listing agents or sellers agents sometimes just tell the homeowner what they want to hear to obtain the listing, to then put their sign in the yard, to then attract buyers. And that's not in the spirit of being a realtor and representing, the community in that way. It just seems a bit, it's off in my opinion. So being honest, I think, is critical. You should expect honesty, and vice versa. When you expect honesty, then get some tough skin and be willing to absorb and listen to that honesty.
Well, and there are other ways to do that. For instance, we have a concierge service that provides a no-cost staging consultation or a declutter consultation.
Yeah.
Well, you bring in a third party, it's funny how people will react differently. They don't see you as the bad guy, but you see as the resource that brought someone in, another professional who, we can't be jacks of all trades. So we have to bring in the right people. It'd be like if I wrote mortgages and I closed the deal and I wrote the home warranty and I did the inspection, look at the liability. And first of all, I would not do a good job at any of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that probably goes a lot further. It's kind of like my kids, man. I tell my son, hey, don't do that. And he does it anyway, but somebody else tells him not to do it and he doesn't do it. And it's like, well, he listened to the third party, but didn't listen to the dear old dad. So I get, that's a great point. I wish more agents would bring those in, but that's money. And sometimes that always doesn't work out for agents. So, okay, great. So I think we covered quite a bit here between buyers and sellers agent. I do, just to kind of recap, I think there's a market for both. I want to touch base on this subject because I think consumers look at it and says, okay, you're a realtor. So what is buyer's agent, seller? Either you're a realtor or you're not a realtor. Well, within being a realtor, there are certain specialties, and representing buyers, representing sellers is part of those specialties. You also see luxury real estate agents, first-time home buyer specialists, REO agents, those sort of things that also seem to be specialties for realtors. But buyers and sellers agent is one that is kind of applicable in today's environment.
I would agree.
Yep. All right, cool. So tell everybody once again, Jay, how can we get a hold of you? We're kind of pushing 30 minutes here. So
all right,
kind of wrap this up.
You can sure call me at any time, 602-301-4862, or email me at desertseller, SELLERAZ @gmail.com, or go to my website, desertselleraz.com.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, again, everybody, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to what we had to say here on this podcast, Valley of the Sun Real Estate Show. Please subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Really appreciate your feedback on this podcast and any other video stuff that I try to provide you, the consumer out there. So thanks again for taking the time out of your day to listen to what we had to say. And I hope to see you out there shopping for a home very soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.